5 horror stories that will make your skin crawl. 1. The Sinister board game. I can still feel the weight of that night, as vivid as if it happened yesterday. It was the crisp autumn evening, and the amber glow of the living room's antique chandelier cast eerie shadows on the walls. My family had gathered for a night of board games, seeking warmth and togetherness in the face of the encroaching darkness outside. Little did we know we were about to delve into a game that would shatter our sense of security. The game in question was called the Sinister board game, an obscure relic we had discovered in the dusty attic of our old family home. Its wooden box was ornately carved, adorned with grotesque faces that seemed to leer at us. The game's instructions were cryptic, almost as if they had been written by someone with an unsettling obsession for the macabre. As we opened the box, an icy gust of wind seemed to sweep through the room, even though all the windows were securely shut. The game board inside was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was divided into countless winding paths and chambers, each adorned with sinister symbols and intricate carvings. In the center, a grotesque figure of a cloaked, skeletal creature stood watch. We took our seats around the table, and my heart raced as I reached into the box to pull out the stack of cards. Each card had a question written on it. Questions that ranged from the deeply personal to the dreadfully ominous. The rules were simple. You drew a card, answered the question, and moved your token along the board. The first question was directed at my younger sister Emma. She pulled a card and read aloud, "What is your deepest fear?" The room seemed to grow colder, and I watched as Emma's face contorted with unease. She hesitated for a moment, then whispered her response, her voice barely audible. The card pulsed with an eerie energy as she placed it on the board. As the game continued, the questions grew darker, more invasive. It was as if the game was prying open the deepest recesses of our minds. My parents exchanged worried glances, but no one was willing to suggest putting the game away. We were all entranced, caught in the game's malevolent grasp. I drew a card that read, "What would be the cause of your demise?" My heart pounded in my chest as I contemplated the question. I reluctantly shared my answer, and the card sizzled with a foreboding energy as it joined the growing pile. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The chandelier flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls like grotesque specters. The air was heavy with a sense of dread that seemed to seep into our very souls. Then, it was my turn again. I drew a card, and my hands trembled as I read the question. "What is your darkest secret?" My throat tightened, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my brow. I couldn't escape the game's relentless gaze. I hesitated, then, with a sense of resignation, revealed my most guarded secret, a secret I had never shared with anyone. As I placed the card on the board, the room seemed to spin, and the cloaked figure at the center of the board seemed to come to life, its hollow eyes fixated on me. The game continued, each question pushing us deeper into a nightmarish abyss of our own making. It was as if the game reveled in our discomfort, feeding off our fear and vulnerability. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity. The chandelier's glow had dimmed to a sickly yellow, and the room was suffused with an oppressive, malevolent energy. The game had taken on a life of its own, and we were mere pawns in its twisted machinations. Finally, my sister drew a card that read, "What will happen to your family?" Her voice trembled as she spoke, and a foreboding silence descended upon the room. The card she placed on the board pulsated with a sinister energy, and then, with a deafening crack, the lights went out. We were plunged into darkness, and the room echoed with our panicked breaths. In the pitch black, I could feel a presence, something malevolent and ancient, lurking in the shadows. The game had unleashed something unspeakable, something that hungered for our very souls. In the darkness, I heard a whisper, a chilling voice that seemed to come from all directions. It spoke words that sent shivers down my spine, words that hinted at a fate far worse than any of us could have imagined. To this day, I cannot forget that night. The night we played the Sinister board game. It revealed our darkest secrets and foretold our most harrowing destinies. And though we tried to forget, the sinister echoes of that night still haunt our family, a chilling reminder that some games should never be played. 2. The mirror's reflection. I can still remember the first time I noticed something was terribly wrong with the mirror in our family home. It was a large, ornate mirror that hung in the hallway, a cherished heirloom passed down through generations. For years, it had reflected the comings and goings of our family without incident, until one fateful evening when it began to show us disturbing glimpses of events that had not yet occurred. The evening was like any other, with the soft hum of laughter and the clinking of dinnerware filling the house. My parents were entertaining guests, old friends from college, and the atmosphere was warm and convivial. As I walked down the hallway to fetch something from my room, I stopped in front of the mirror as I often did to adjust my hair. That's when I noticed it. My reflection was not alone. Standing behind me in the dimly lit hallway was a shadowy figure. Its presence was chilling, like an icy hand on my shoulder. I turned around, my heart racing, but there was no one there. I looked back at the mirror, and my reflection was once again alone. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease and rejoin the dinner party, but I couldn't quite forget what I had seen. That night as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but wonder if my imagination had played tricks on me. Maybe it had been a play of shadows, or perhaps I was simply overtired. But the next evening, as I passed by the mirror again, I froze. This time, the reflection was unmistakable, and it showed my parents sitting in the very same room where we had dined the night before. They were lifeless, their faces twisted in pain and fear. The room around them was engulfed in flames, the walls crackling with orange and red. I stumbled back in horror, unable to tear my eyes away from the dreadful sight. The mirror had become a portal to a nightmare that had not yet unfolded, a terrifying premonition of a future that I prayed would never come to pass. I rushed to find my parents, my voice trembling as I tried to explain what I had seen. They exchanged worried glances but reassured me that it was just my imagination running wild. The mirror was old, they said, and perhaps it was playing tricks on me. They suggested we cover it with a cloth to ease my anxiety. The mirror's sinister revelations did not stop there. Night after night, it showed us more visions of impending doom. Car accidents, illness, and even a break-in at our home. Each time, I would witness these horrifying events in the mirror, and each time, my pleas for action were met with disbelief. The once cherished heirloom had become a source of terror, a portal into a future that seemed inevitable. I watched helplessly as the mirror foretold events that slowly began to unfold, events that no one should have to experience. As time passed, my family's skepticism turned to dread. We sought the help of experts, but no one could explain the mirror's malevolent power. It seemed to feed on our fear, tormenting us with visions of tragedy and suffering. In a desperate attempt to break free from the mirror's grip, we decided to remove it from the wall and hide it away in the attic. The moment it was out of sight, the haunting vision ceased. The relief was palpable, and we thought we had finally escaped its curse. But the mirror's influence lingered. It had shown us a future we were unable to prevent, and the weight of that knowledge haunted us every day. The mirror had torn away our sense of security, leaving us forever changed. Even now, as I write this, I can't help but glance nervously at the attic door, wondering if the mirror's malevolent power still lingers, waiting for the right moment to reveal more of its horrifying prophecies. It serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the reflection we see is not the one we want to see, and that the future can be a far darker place than we ever imagined. 3. The Abandoned Factory. The day I decided to explore the abandoned factory was like any other gloomy, overcast morning. The factory, a colossal structure of rusting metal and shattered windows, had always intrigued me from afar. Its eerie silhouette loomed on the outskirts of town, like a forgotten sentinel of a bygone era. Armed with my camera and a sense of morbid curiosity, I couldn't resist the pull to explore its decaying secrets. The factory's grounds were overgrown with weeds, as if nature itself had claimed it back. As I approached the entrance, I couldn't help but feel a shiver crawl up my spine. The air was thick with an oppressive stillness, broken only by the distant echoes of crows cawing. It was as if the very earth around the factory was warning me to turn back. Undeterred, I stepped through the broken doors, my camera in hand, and was immediately met with a stench of dampness and decay. The interior was a cavernous expanse of rusted machinery and shattered concrete. Sunlight filtered through the cracked windows, casting wan, eerie shadows on the walls. My footsteps echoed ominously as I ventured deeper into the factory's belly, the silence broken only by the creaking of metal and the faint dripping of water. I raised my camera to capture the haunting beauty of the decayed machinery when I first noticed it. A faint whisper, like a distant voice, calling my name. I froze in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no one else in sight, and yet the voice persisted, growing louder and more insistent with each step I took. It was as if the factory itself was trying to communicate with me, to reveal its long-buried secrets. As I wandered deeper into the labyrinthine corridors, I began to notice unsettling details in my photographs. Images of ghostly figures lurking in the corners, their eyes filled with sorrow and despair. The factory seemed to be telling a story, a tale of suffering and tragedy that had been hidden from the world for far too long. One particular photograph sent shivers down my spine. A group of workers, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear, huddled in a dimly lit corner. They were emaciated, their clothes tattered, and their eyes haunted by some unspeakable horror. It was as if the factory had trapped their souls in its decaying walls. The further I ventured, the more chilling the photographs became. I captured images of broken chains and shackles, remnants of a time when the factory had been a place of unspeakable cruelty. It was a stark reminder of the suffering that had occurred within these walls. Then, I stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its entrance concealed by a pile of rubble. Inside, I found a series of disturbing photographs, yellowed with age. They depicted unspeakable acts of violence and cruelty, a gruesome record of the factory's dark history. I realized with a sickening dread that I had stumbled upon a chamber of horrors, a place where unspeakable atrocities had taken place. As I hurriedly snapped pictures of the grisly scenes, I heard the voice again, louder and more desperate than ever. It was as if the very walls of the factory were screaming at me to leave, to escape the horrors I had uncovered. I rushed out of the factory, my heart pounding, my camera filled with images that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. I felt as though I had glimpsed into the darkest recesses of human cruelty, and the factory had become a malevolent witness to those unspeakable acts. To this day, I cannot forget the chilling photographs I captured in that forsaken place. The factory's dark history, the tortured souls that still lingered within its decaying walls, had become a part of me. And as I look at those haunting images, I can't help but wonder if the factory's secrets will ever truly be laid to rest, or if they will continue to haunt those who dare to explore its forsaken halls. 4. The Disappearing Townsfolk. The village of Glenwood, nestled deep within a dense, ancient forest, had always been an idyllic, peaceful place. Surrounded by towering trees and the soothing babble of a winding river, it was a community where everyone knew each other's names, a place seemingly untouched by the outside world. But that tranquility was shattered when the first villager disappeared. It began on a misty morning in early autumn. I was in my cozy cottage, nestled at the edge of the village, when the frantic pounding on my door jolted me from sleep. It was Mary, a neighbor, her face pale with fear. She stammered out the words, "It's Emily. She's gone." My heart raced as I followed Mary to Emily's cottage, which was eerily quiet. We found her front door wide open, and inside, her belongings scattered on the floor. But there was no sign of Emily herself. No cry for help, no struggle. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. As the days passed, the disappearances multiplied. People would go about their daily routines, only to vanish without a trace. It was a chilling and bewildering phenomenon. Each time, They left behind only their clothes, neatly folded or discarded in disarray, as if they had been snatched away, while in the midst of changing. The village descended into a state of fear and paranoia. A once close-knit community now locked their doors at all hours, and the laughter that had once filled the streets was replaced by whispered conversations filled with dread. We tried to make sense of it, but the explanations ranged from wild superstitions to wilder conspiracy theories. I joined a group of villagers determined to unravel the mystery. Armed with lanterns and a deep sense of foreboding, we patrolled the village at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of what was happening. But the nights were silent, save for the eerie rustling of leaves in the forest and the distant hooting of owls. Then, one moonless night, I saw it. A flicker of movement near the edge of the forest. I signaled to the others and we approached cautiously. There, in the pale moonlight, we saw the clothes of another missing villager, neatly laid out on the ground. It was as if the forest itself was taunting us, leaving behind these macabre remnants. But there was no sign of the person who had worn those clothes. We searched the area, calling out their name, but our voices were swallowed by the darkness. It was as if the very forest had swallowed them whole. Desperation gnawed at us as more of our friends and family vanished. The once vibrant village was becoming a ghost town, a place haunted by memories of those who had disappeared. Fear hung in the air like a suffocating fog, and it seemed that no one was safe from the inexplicable horror that had befallen us. As time passed, we grew weary and resigned to our fate. The village, once the haven of warmth and camaraderie, had become a place of despair and dread. We could only watch in helpless terror as the mysterious force claimed more of our loved ones, leaving behind only their clothes as eerie, silent reminders of their presence. To this day, the village of Glenwood remains a place of chilling mystery, a place where people continue to disappear without explanation. The forest that once provided solace and shelter has become a sinister enigma, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, and where the clothes of the vanished serve as haunting tokens of the unsolved riddle that plagues our once peaceful village. 5. The haunted workplace. Working at a corporate office had always been a mundane affair. Endless meetings, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the ceaseless drone of office gossip. But everything changed when a new hire, Daniel, walked through the glass doors and into our lives. At first, he seemed like any other colleague. He was polite, quiet, and wore impeccably tailored suits. But as the weeks went by, strange occurrences began to unfold and a cloud of dread settled over our workplace. It started innocently enough. One morning I found my office chair mysteriously moved to the opposite side of my desk. I dismissed it as a prank and moved on, but then it happened again and again. Each time I would find my chair in a different location, as if it had a mind of its own. I wasn't the only one experiencing bizarre events. Co-workers began reporting strange noises in the office, whispers that seemed to come from empty rooms, footsteps echoing in the hallway when no one was there, and the eerie sensation of being watched when alone in their offices. The most unsettling incidents occurred in the elevator. One evening I stepped inside, and the doors closed behind me with a soft click. But instead of going up or down as I pressed the button for my floor, the elevator began to descend, plunging into darkness. Panic clawed at my chest as I frantically pressed every button, but the elevator remained stubbornly unresponsive. Just when I thought I was trapped, it abruptly jolted to a stop and then ascended to my floor, as if nothing had happened. I mentioned the elevator incident to my colleagues, and they exchanged nervous glances. It seemed that everyone had experienced their own inexplicable encounters, but no one could pinpoint the cause. It was during a late-night work session that I had my first encounter with Daniel. I had stayed behind to finish a project and was alone in the office. The silence was oppressive, and I could feel the weight of exhaustion bearing down on me. As I worked, I suddenly heard a soft, melancholic melody drifting through the hallway. It was a haunting tune. Like a lament, curiosity drove me to investigate, and I followed the music to Daniel's office. The door was slightly ajar, and as I peered inside, my heart skipped a beat. There was Daniel, sitting at his desk, playing a violin with a grace that sent shivers down my spine. His eyes were closed, and his fingers danced across the strings, producing an otherworldly melody that seemed to reverberate with sadness. I watched, mesmerized, until he abruptly stopped and opened his eyes, fixing me with a piercing gaze. A chill ran down my spine as he spoke, his voice as cold as ice. "Do you believe in the supernatural, my friend?" he asked, his eyes never leaving mine. Before I could respond, he stood up and walked out of his office, leaving the violin behind. The music lingered in the air, an unsettling echo of his presence. The next day, I approached my coworkers, and it became clear that I wasn't the only one who had witnessed Daniel's eerie musical performance. We decided to confront him, to ask him about the strange events that had plagued our office since his arrival. But when we arrived at his office, it was empty. His desk was bare, and the violin was gone. It was as if he had never been there. We checked with HR, but there was no record of a new hire named Daniel. As days turned into weeks, this strange occurrences continued. People would arrive to find their belongings rearranged or missing, and the eerie whispers in the office grew louder. The atmosphere had become oppressive, and it was clear that whatever had taken hold of our workplace was growing stronger. One fateful evening, as I was leaving the office, I heard the haunting melody of the violin again. It echoed through the empty halls, drawing me towards Daniel's office like a moth to a flame. I couldn't resist the pull, and as I stepped inside, I found myself face to face with him once more. He stood in the shadows, his eyes filled with an unearthly intensity. "I am a collector of souls," he said, his voice like a chilling breeze. "And now I have come for yours." As he reached out towards me, a darkness overcame me, and I felt myself being pulled into an abyss. I screamed, but no sound escaped my lips. The world around me dissolved into darkness, and I knew that I had become another lost soul in the haunted workplace, forever trapped in the malevolent grasp of Daniel and the sinister forces that had taken hold of our once ordinary office. Which story caught your attention the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, stay safe. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Check out my website in the description below to see what I'm writing. And just below there are some suggestions related to what we talked about today. Peace.